welcome to a new episode of the Genesis Temple podcast. This is Damiano, and I'm gonna talk with TwoBitMatt, who is one of the lead writers on Skywind. This is a huge fan project all about bringing Morrowind to Skyrim, so that fans can enjoy the best of both worlds. So we're gonna go over our love for the Elder Scrolls series, how did our experiences differ through the years, and of course, how is Skywind coming up, and what can we expect from this huge project. Enjoy! So I'm here with Matt. He was described to me, so of course if I get anything wrong, he will correct me, but as someone that is super knowledgeable about the world of video game writing, especially what it takes to build something like Skywind. So, you got a lot of responsibility on your shoulders, Matt. Are you ready for that kind of responsibility?
I certainly hope so. I think my love of the series and of that entry in particular has guided me well so far, and hopefully will continue to do so.
This is the first podcast that I've done about the Elder Scrolls. I don't think I even mentioned them at all in previous episodes, but I might be wrong because my memory is just not very good these days. Of course, we're gonna start from the beginning, like how do we get into the Elder Scrolls? Me is kind of a quick story in that the first game I played was Daggerfall, and specifically was the demo, which I got when I was right about when it came out, so I was kind of a preteen, like a young teen of sorts. I think all I did in in Daggerfall was test out if anybody would react to my character being in several states of undress.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yes, okay. So it's not just my experience, that's good.
No.
But I don't think I ever played it correctly, probably because I didn't know how to. I was very new to the world of PC, especially RPG, so I had no idea really what to do. I had only played isometric RPGs on console, so I had no clue how to play Daggerfall, so that was it. And so my big entry was definitely Morrowind, but we're gonna go back to Morrowind in a bit, so I'm not gonna spoil it a lot. So Matt, what was your introduction to the world of the Elder Scrolls?
So I remember, so I had this friend who had more money than me and always had a nicer computer than me. And so I played PC games at his house a lot of times before, he was kind of where I would play a demo of something. Mm-hmm. I was lucky enough that we had a computer in my house because my dad worked in drafting and engineering. So we had a computer in the house, and if I fell in love with a game, then, I could pick it up or something like that. I would usually play games over at his house. And I'm pretty sure we played Arena. I honestly don't remember because it came out when I was young enough, but he had basically any game that he could get his hands on. So, but it was one of those things that, I was into other stuff at the time. So I, might have seen him play it for 5 minutes, or I played it, for long enough to create a character and give it a dumb name. But, I also would have been pretty young when Arena first came out. Daggerfall, I do remember. It was, to me at the time, too big and directionless, and so I had zero interest in it. I was much more into kind of like the Final Fantasy turn-based RPGs at the time. Also, kind of more of a console person. So I loved the Super Nintendo. That was my jam. I had a PC, loved playing PC games, but for me, PC games were first-person shooters, real-time strategy games, things that you really didn't get on consoles, especially shooters. Back in the time, that was not a thing. This was pre-GoldenEye, really. So Daggerfall was impressive, but it didn't catch me. So actually, much like yourself, Morrowind was really my introduction into the Elder Scrolls.
I definitely felt the same for Daggerfall. I mean, it was the demo, so of course there was no I had no idea how big it was, so that didn't put me off. But yeah, my introduction to RPG was actually, I think, there's 2 or 3 games that I mention a lot, which are those obscure RPGs on the Sega Mega Drive or Genesis. That's really where my interest towards RPGs came from. So both Rings of Power, of course, that's a game that comes up a lot in this podcast, by Naughty Dog when they were just 2 people, and the other one, of course, is Buck Rogers' Countdown to Doomsday. So both experiences were completely different from anything that you would find on PC. Even Ultima was completely different, even though it's kind of similar, ballpark. The first-person RPG was not something that I would be interested in.
Right, yeah.
So fast forward to Morrowind. So that was 2000. 2. So I was just at the perfect age for that, even the perfect moment, because I was just like out of high school and into university, or college as we will call it in America. So I was like the cusp of maturity, like the right kind of age when you have more free time, because you're going to every day to school, to something that's a little bit more free form, at least in Italy it was kinda. So I remember like picking up Morrowind. Actually, I first saw it at a friend, of course, because again I also had a friend who had a much more powerful PC, just like your experience. I saw Morrowind and I just got it like the first day, the next day that I came back home, and I was like, okay, I have to get Morrowind right away. And I was completely lost in it for like weeks. Like I remember going to lessons, and instead of following the lessons, I was just bringing with me a notebook of all the quests that I collected in Morrowind. I was just keeping notes. I was like redoing the map by memory and saying, okay, I gotta go to Sidanin, I gotta go to Vivek, I gotta go to here, I gotta go to there. I don't think that ever happened before Morrowind, and I don't think that ever happened after Morrowind. So definitely my life, at least in my gaming life, which takes probably more than half of my existence, there's definitely a pre-Morrowind and after Morrowind.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair in a lot of ways. Even for the industry itself, there's an argument that could be made for pre and post Morrowind. I've told this story before in some circles, and it's something that I almost feel a sense of shame admitting. But I didn't like Morrowind when I first played it, and I'll tell you why. So a friend was playing it, said, this game is really, really amazing, you got to check it out. I was like, oh, like Elder Scrolls, like this sounds familiar. And I was like, oh yeah, Daggerfall. And so I was like, sure, so I borrowed the disc, installed it, spun it up, got off the boat, made my character, go out into the world, immediately go to like the first cave that's just, a stone's throw from Sedanin. And I go in there and, I'm wearing like sackcloth and, carrying like a table knife basically. And I go pick a fight with a bandit, and immediately I just get destroyed. And I'm like, man, this sucks. Like, what? Like, I can't play this game. And he's like, well, what did you do? Like, what happened? So, I explained it to him. He's like, yeah, man, you're an idiot. Like, why do you think you would take on a bandit in a cave when you're like not armed, not armored? Like, there's no reason that makes any sense. Like, I was like, oh. It's like, yeah, you should probably reapproach this as you are a prisoner fresh off a boat. What do you do? And I was like, oh, okay. So, actually role play in a role-playing game. And so then I was like, okay, well, let me like kind of learn the lay of the land and talk to people. And then I just started falling in with this vibrant world. And it's just how alien and strange it is. And also the fact that, if you go to these ancient Daedric ruins, like if you just wander in there, like you're probably going to die. You're not experienced. You're not this hero. You go up to people, half of them don't even want to talk to you. They refer to you very derisively, the Outlander and things like that. And it just felt so much more real than anything else that you could play, where, in so many of these games, it's like, oh, you're the hero, the hero of time, the hero of whatever. And Morrowind really was a living world that you kind of stepped into, and you had this sense of all of these things that were going on that were beyond you, that were of an international scale, even though you're only playing on a national level. You're in this one province, and there's all this stuff that's going on with this, continent spanning empire and these, otherworldly forces and stuff like that. And it just really hit me in a very cool way. And I also was in a prime spot to spend way too much time on that. I was in my, this would have been my junior year of high school, or my sophomore year. But so, I'm a couple of years younger than you are, but I had enough time at the time to, not enough responsibilities that I was able to dump way too much time into the game. And much like you, I was, constantly, if I wasn't playing Morrowind, I was thinking about Morrowind. What's the next thing I want to do? Do I want to, do this for the Mages Guild? Do I want to go here? Do I want to go back to this place and try to explore this thing? It was just a game that stuck with me so much more than, pretty much anything else. It's like, there were games that probably I've played more time prior to playing Morrowind, but there was nothing that ever consumed my thoughts that much outside of playing the game, and that says, for me too, that says a lot, because I've played a ton of games, and it's like I definitely, playing Super Mario RPG, and like, I'm not playing the game, and it's like, yeah, maybe I'm thinking about like, oh, this cool thing that happened in the game, but no, with Morrowind, it's like I want to be back in that world and playing around in that setting.
Yeah, that's 100% how I felt at the time as well. I can't even like give you an estimate of how long I played that, like months, but it could have been weeks, because I just like lost track of time at one point. I just have no idea. I wonder if I still have my save now that I think about it, but my original save game, my orc. I think my original character was orc. But yeah, I spent so much time on it. Like it felt like I never really left, even though I did leave. In that, I mean, it's definitely not a game that I go back again and again. Like maybe there are games that I liked less than Morrowind, but I do go back more often than I do with Morrowind, which is strange. Like I have it consumed me so much at the time. It was like I have nothing left to give. Like it's like
no, I mean I think that's fair. Morrowind it's an investment. That's actually, I think, one thing that I discovered that helped me fall in love with the game, and it's something that now being involved with Skywind, and this being a project of kind of bringing Morrowind to a more modern audience, or for people who haven't been able to experience that world. A lot of people seeing what we're doing with Skywind, being excited about it, they're like, oh, I want to go and try Morrowind. And a lot of people, they kind of immediately hit a wall where it's like, this feels dated, and it's like, well, no, you have to spend some time. Like, you have to learn the game, learn the world, learn the mechanics. There's this dice roll that's happening behind the scenes with all the combat, which is either frequently criticized or frequently held up as genius, depending on what person you're talking to. It's one of those things that you have to learn. Your stats matter, how fatigued you are matters, all of these things. And so there's kind of this investment where it's like, Oblivion Remastered just came out, and it plays, just like Oblivion, and it's like you can drop in and play that, and it's pretty simple to kind of hit the ground running, go through the Imperial sewers, exit, become the hero of Kvatch, start exploring the world and doing whatever. Morrowind does not hold your hand. You basically go through, I think it's like maybe 2 loading screens. Like you go into the Census and Excise office, and I think you go into I think the office is like the second office is a separate loading screen. Then you like go get the ring, and they show you how to like use magic and open your inventory, and then like you exit that, and it's like, congrats, enjoy the world, good luck.
That's it.
And that's it. And you're like, okay, so what am I supposed to do? And the answer is, it's up to you. And I think that's something that it requires an investment. And I will say Morrowind is a game that I do go back to frequently, because it's like comfort food for me. Mm-hmm. There have been times where going through like a bad breakup or something like that, I'm like, I'm going to reinstall Morrowind. I need something to act as a balm for my soul. It's difficult for me to complete a Morrowind playthrough these days, just in terms of like going through all of the content that's in Tribunal, all of the content that's in Blood Moon, and stuff like that. But I enjoy dipping my toes back into the world from time to time, and I've probably got, I don't know, like half a dozen saves across different drives and stuff that I've kept over the years. If
anyone is thinking about playing Morrowind today, of course the first thing you have to install is the Remove Cliff Racers mod. I mean, that's just like mandatory.
I disagree. I think that
okay.
I will stand by this. Cliff Racers are an important part of Morrowind because they are a pest of the highest order, and they deserve to be there because that land is hostile. It hates you, and Cliff Racers are a perfect example of that. I mean, how many times are you resting on the side of the volcano being like, okay, I just need like a moment to like save my game, and it's like, no, a cliff racer is going to attack you, and it's going to give you a disease, and you don't have any potions of cure disease in your inventory, so good luck, have fun.
Okay, so maybe you need to I don't know if it exists, but like a mod to make cliff racers even worse. I mean, I think it might exist.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's all sorts of things that can play with spawn rates and stuff like that. I know there's a very famous GIF of like 1,000 cliff racers descending upon a player that we use probably not infrequently in the Skywind dev channels. They are just notoriously terrible creatures.
Yes.
So you're Italian, so it's like the pigeons in Rome. if you go to Rome, like, you need to expect the pigeons, and you need to be able to, like, dodge out of their way, because they don't care about you. Like, they've been pooping all over that city for millennia.
I would say probably today more the seagulls.
Okay, fair.
Yeah, they've been replaced. That's kind of a deluxe upgrade, and yeah, seagulls are way worse than pigeons. At least pigeons,
Yeah, I was gonna say, is that an upgrade? That sounds like the DLC that just, like, removes the easier difficulty settings. And it's like, cool, now you have something that's gonna poop everywhere and steal your food.
Yeah, it's like the Elden Ring DLC. It's gonna make everything worse. Yeah. But yeah, at least pigeons have, like, that tragic backstory that they used to be the humans' companionship, and then we abandoned them. So you can kind of feel pity for them. But seagulls are just the devil's spawn. So generally, they're definitely more like the cliff racers, I would say. So
yeah, fair.
But yeah, I mean, I've gone back to. Of course, it's not true that I haven't gone back to Morrowind. I did go back to Morrowind several times, but it's usually like a whole process of selecting what kind of experience do I want. Like, I often get lost in let's install this HD texture mod, the more clothes, the better faces, this one. I know that now they're, like, huge, like 4 gigabytes packages that, like, include the whole thing, so that makes it kind of easier if you want to install them. But I don't know, like, after I've done all that, I usually, like, lose interest. It's like, now you're going through all that trouble, all that work, and then you don't even play. Like, yeah, I play, like, 5 minutes, and I say, oh, wow, now it looks much better. Like, it looks almost like a modern game, almost being the keyword. And then I'm like, okay, I've seen enough. Okay, that's it. I kind of feel sorry.
Yeah, I mean, at the end, there is something to be said for the fact that, the content is what it is, and so if you've played through everything, it's still basically just what that is. And, there are fan-made quests, and there are, I will say, some pretty expansive mod efforts that are ongoing. For example, like Tamriel Rebuilt.
Yes.
That really just are so far above and beyond anything that was originally imagined for the Elder Scrolls 3 in terms of what can be done with that engine, and so they really go to the limits of what can be made and creating original assets and stuff like that. But even with that, you are still playing Morrowind on the 2002 engine. There's upgrades and mods and patch projects and things like that, which are basically necessary to play it today. But there is still something to be said about, it's now I hate that I'm going to say it this way, but it's now almost a quarter century old.
Yep.
It's almost 25 years ago. So it's definitely showing its age in that regard.
Morrowind's old enough to drink and drive.
Yes.
Probably not the best, not at the same time.
Don't drink Sujama and hop on a silk strider, please.
Or smoke skooma in case.
Yeah.
You never know. But yeah, I also remember, like, being a day one Tribunal buyer, and that was kind of a big letdown. I think that was one of the first moments that I thought, okay, I think my time with Morrowind is up. Like, I've already finished it, and of course I expected something much larger, much bigger. Of course, Tribunal is kind of a small expansion. I couldn't even review it today because I don't remember anything. I just remember the disappointment. So you might know more. Actually, you do know more than me, for sure.
So I was kind of mixed. I appreciated... For me, what I loved about it was that it was expanding on some of the stuff that I was really excited about. Relationships of these mortals turned gods, the titular tribunal of Tribunal. So getting to see how Almalexia lived and, her own form of being worshipped in her own city. But that being said, you had the city of Mournhold that you would teleport into, which involved you having to go find somebody in a really awkward place in a maze of a building in Wolverine Hall. It was just, oh man, finding that person was awful. Mournhold, it was pretty, but it was just this one city. Had a couple districts, and then eventually you go into the sewers, and then, spoiler alert for, a 2002 or 2003 expansion to a ancient game, but eventually you go to Clockwork City to find Sothasil, the last member of the Tribunal who you haven't met, who you don't get to meet because he's been murdered. I appreciated that it kind of wrapped up the story of the Tribunal and your player character's relationship with them, and that was dependent on what you had done in the main quest, where it changed between whether or not Almalexia thinks that you are in fact like her long dead husband reincarnated, or there's just a possibility that maybe you are. So I liked all of that, and I liked the expansion of kind of the Dunmer politics of the fact that they have their own king, but he's kind of subservient to the Empire. There was a lot that I thought could have been better. I would have loved for Tribunal to have been integrated into the world somehow, and I would have liked there to be kind of more originality added to some things. I would have loved to explore more of Clockwork City. That seemed like really kind of a missed opportunity. I enjoyed it. I don't think I would put it on my top like 3 DLCs of all time on anything, which is surprising because like I love Morrowind so much. Like I want to put Tribunal higher up there. For me, like what I enjoyed about it really was the lore and kind of adding on to that. But similarly though, I will say I felt a little more disappointed in Blood Moon, because it was like, oh man, there's like a ton of Nords and kind of this like mythology that is separate from everything else in Morrowind, and it kind of felt like a sort of odd man out to me. And the werewolf stuff was fun but incredibly broken, and the werewolves, oh man, the werewolves were just terribly frustrating to fight against, because they hit like a tank, and it didn't matter like how strong you were. It was just like, no, we're gonna eat through your armor, and then you're gonna die and reload your save that was apparently an hour ago, because shame on you.
But you could transform into a werewolf, so that was something.
Right. And that's, if you went that path. But if you're role-playing and you're like, yeah, no, my character isn't going to be a werewolf, then it's like, yeah, cool, well, enjoy getting mauled constantly.
Yeah, I talk about paying for your choices, right? Yeah, Blood Moon, I was like, I probably wasn't day one buyer, but I did get it pretty soon after release. And but yeah, by that point, I think I had probably moved on from Morrowind. So like, I spent a few hours playing it, and then I was like, okay, that's better. But yeah, probably too late for me to like spend any kind of significant time in it. So
I will say I did appreciate that they were expanding on the idea of, in Morrowind in the base game, when you go join one of the great houses, if you join one of the great houses, you have the ability eventually to construct a stronghold. So, if you're with House Telvanni, then, you construct like a mushroom tower kind of thing. And with Blood Moon, they had Raven Rock, which is then seen again in Skyrim's DLC Dragonborn. And with Raven Rock, they kind of like let you make some choices about like, oh, okay, well, how do you want to build up this colony? And you could see it was kind of the beginning of Bethesda experimenting with the idea of player-controlled settlements, which is obviously something that they've really been chasing. Like, I think they kind of didn't go after it too hard with Fallout 3 or Oblivion. But then as soon as you see, Fallout 4 and Skyrim with the Hearthfire expansion, but then really in Fallout 4 and then Starfield with, the kind of freeform world editing that they allow you to do with placing buildings and stuff like that, gathering resources. So I think it's interesting to see that. I find it curious that that's, I think, where that kind of started. And I don't know if they necessarily took all the best lessons from that, because for me at least, getting resources by, placing down extractors and stuff like that in the world, it's like, I'd rather just like let me loot a container like I would in any other game, and like I already do in this game. Having to set up an economy, like if I want to do that, like I will play a game that, there's games that let you do that, and that's not what I'm playing this for. So, I'm sure there are tons of people that tickles their brain a lot. But for me, it's like Fallout 4, I'm just placing like artillery pieces so that I can bomb everything to death.
Interestingly enough, I remember being, of course, very excited about Oblivion. I did get it for PC, again, day one. Also the collector's edition, of course, because
same with the little coin.
Yeah, the little coin, yes, because I had money to waste back then, good times. And I remember playing it. I remember finishing it. So that's strange, because I don't remember like the moment I finished Morrowind. Like I'm sure that I did, but maybe it's because it's been a while. But even years ago I did not remember. But I do remember exactly when I finished Oblivion, and I was like, okay, that's over and done with. I don't want to play that again. Not because I was disappointed. It was like what I expected, more or less. So I wasn't disappointed by Oblivion. But it just felt like I had my feel. Like I felt that in Morrowind I could just go on and spend my time. In Oblivion I was like, okay, yes, I've seen enough of Oblivion. Like I'm full. I don't know. So I don't know if that was your experience.
So Oblivion was definitely day one for me, because one, to hear just the Nerva Rising kind of motif of the Morrowind music being brought into this other game. The first trailer where they kind of revealed Oblivion.
Ooh, yes.
Was just so exciting. Like I immediately was just on the hype train. And then they're like, oh, we've got physics and stuff like that. And I've mentioned to you before that I'm an Unreal Tournament player. And so like I remember Unreal Tournament 2003, some of the first demo stuff that they came out with for Unreal Engine 2 was showing like ragdoll physics. And that was really cool. I mean, a couple years, like 3 years before Oblivion. When they were showing Oblivion, it's like, oh, this living fantasy world with physics. And, you can pick up this bucket and move it. I was like, oh, this is so cool. So I got the game, day one, collector's edition, same. And I still have that coin actually sitting in a little case behind me. I played through it, and it was fun. Was definitely an evolution of some of the stuff in Morrowind. I was saddened by how much stuff was gone, or how much things had been simplified in some cases. I don't directly begrudge this. I think it's just the reality of the situation, but it was obvious that this was because Morrowind had been so successful, kind of actually touching on what I said earlier about the games industry. Morrowind had been so successful, not just as an RPG in the PC space, but it brought open world RPGs to consoles, through their, Morrowind did things that the Xbox console wasn't designed to do, which is genius. I mean, it was absolutely genius what they were able to do. But it brought console players into this kind of massive role-playing space. And so with Oblivion, they really were trying to nail that experience for console players. And that definitely affected PC development. And so there was that element of it. The bigger thing for me was that so much of what I loved about Morrowind was how just absolutely weird it was. The Netches, like essentially the cows of Vardenfell, are these floating jellyfish leather-covered things. If you're playing Oblivion, it's like, yeah, here's a deer. It's a deer. You can kill it and get venison. Cool. I've been playing, Neverwinter Nights and Ultima and, every other game that has, your kind of generic, like, here's goblins and elves and orcs. Oblivion very much felt like it was riding the highs of Lord of the Rings at the time, coming out in movies. And I think that really kind of influenced that direction. And so it was very much a much more traditional fantasy setting. So it was enjoyable, but it lacked that alien panache of Morrowind. Coincidentally, one of the things that I probably would list as, top 10 DLC of all time at least, possibly even into the top 5, Shivering Isles. The Shivering Isles DLC for Oblivion was fantastic for me because it leaned back into the weirdness of the Elder Scrolls. And that combined with the just terrific performance from Wes Johnson as Sheogorath couldn't be beat. That was amazing. But, it took that DLC for me to really be like, oh yeah, Oblivion's great. Like, I enjoyed Oblivion. It was good. Shivering Isles made it great. But if I took Oblivion, when it first came out, when I first played it, I was like, yeah, this is good. I played through it. I had fun. But it definitely did not hit the same notes that Morrowind did. And honestly, still doesn't. I've been playing Oblivion Remastered since it came out. It's enjoyable. I'm having fun with it. I'm playing that and other games versus I know, like, right now, if after you and I finish talking, if I reinstall Morrowind on my computer and I start playing it, like, that's all I'm going to play. I'm not going to be playing something else. I'm going to be playing just Morrowind because that's how I am with Morrowind. But, like, I'm back in Oblivion and it's like, yeah, I'm playing it here and there, but I'm also playing some Doom and some of this other stuff. So, I think that was the difference for me at least. And that honestly kind of followed through a little bit to Skyrim.
Yeah, same. But yeah, I relate in that Oblivion just felt like it's a good fantasy RPG, but to me it doesn't need any special notes that I feel like I have to go back to it. That's why I didn't even really invest in the remaster. I mean, I might at some point, just to bring back some nostalgia, I guess. But yeah, not particularly interested. And I'm also interested when I get like videos. It did happen a couple of times on TikTok, like videos of people like documenting weird stuff going on in Oblivion with the writing, and yeah, there's like 2 or 3 like weird stuff, and I'm like, but guys, there's way weirder stuff in Morrowind, you know. But I don't want to play the H card, you know.
Right. Yeah.
not yet. But yeah, Skyrim, I have to say, I probably wasn't in the right frame of mind when it came out, so it wasn't a day one purchase. I do not even remember when I bought it. I don't really remember. I did at some point, but I don't know when or how or why. I just played like a few hours, and then I was like, okay, that's it. I felt even less enthusiastic about it than Oblivion. It was like, okay, I couldn't really find any reason to keep playing. It's like yet another evolution of the same ideas in a different setting, but it wasn't really bringing anything new to the table. I know that a lot of people will disagree, but yeah, that's how I felt.
I mean, I think that's entirely valid. I will say that my experience was different because Skyrim was another day one for me, which I actually very explicitly remember. I went to the midnight release at the Best Buy that I was working at the time, and I got the collector's edition that I had pre-ordered and got my employee discount on, which was a giant box. I mean, we're talking like a box like the size of a human torso. And I had that, like I walked home with that box, and I think I probably had like a 20-25 minute walk from where I worked to my apartment at the time. So I was really excited, you know, got this little Alduin statue and everything. And I installed it, set it up, started playing. For me, I would probably put Skyrim above Oblivion, mostly because I felt like Skyrim felt more like its own world. It was just distinct enough that it didn't just feel like kind of more generic fantasy. And I also felt like the technology had advanced much more significantly, which is also, you know, to be fair, a credit of the length of time between games, where, you know, with Morrowind coming out in 2002, Oblivion came out in 2006, so you've got 4 years in between, and that's ignoring Bethesda working on a lot of other stuff, including add-on content for Morrowind in between the development cycles. And then, you know, Skyrim came out 2011, so they had 5 years there, had been able to focus more of their resources on making Skyrim more of an upgrade to Oblivion versus Oblivion as an upgrade to Morrowind. I did not enjoy the fact that they had further simplified some things or removed some things altogether. You know, there's no spell making, stuff like that. Did enjoy where they were adding on other things. I appreciated being able to craft your own weapons and your own armor. But yeah, I don't know. There was the changes to the leveling system were definitely different, where it's like, oh, now you have these constellations that you kind of put points into, even though they're still following the formula of you have, you know, to use your skills to make progress in those skills. That's something I've always loved about the Elder Scrolls. It's like, you know, if you want to get better at using a blunt weapon, pick up a blunt weapon and use it. That will make you better at using a blunt weapon. And so, you know, with Morrowind, it was just like, yeah, you do that and the number goes up. With Oblivion, it was like, oh, if the number goes up and you reach these certain, you know, perks or peaks of expertise, it's like, oh, you're now a journeyman blunt weapons master. You know, now you're an expert. And so you get these, you know, added abilities where it's like, you know, swing your weapon this direction and it causes this effect. And then Skyrim is like, oh, well, we're going to give you perk points and you're going to like put those into these slots. And it was like, it just felt different, and I don't know that it was necessarily better or worse, but it felt like they were trying something a little more different in terms of the evolution of the gameplay versus what Oblivion did from Morrowind. I also just felt like the depth of the experience in Skyrim was better. I appreciated like the fact that they had, you know, Blackreach. They had this like entire like expansive underground world in Skyrim that was kind of connected to these like different ruins, and I felt like they did a better job of kind of getting the DLC out. I don't know that the DLC was significantly better than Shivering Isles was, but they did more of it, and Dragonborn was pretty cool, so I enjoyed that. But, again, if you judge it just based on the vanilla experience, I think that I enjoyed Skyrim more than I enjoyed Oblivion, because I felt like it was a better iteration off of the previous game. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same where it's like, I might go back and play through Skyrim again, but if I do, like, I'll probably be playing other games at the same time. It doesn't get its hooks in me the same way personally.
Yeah, but I'm 100% aware that I did not give Skyrim a fair shake at the time. In fact, I did promise myself to go back to it with a fresh perspective, but that never happened. So perhaps I might have to wait for Skywind at this point. No, okay, that's not this.
Well, I'll tell you'll get a very different experience than Skyrim when you play Skywind. So.
Definitely. So that might not be the best way to reevaluate Skyrim.
I mean, or maybe it is. Maybe that is in fact the best way, because we've done things with the engine that I think will surprise and delight people. So maybe that is the best way to experience the Skyrim engine, is by playing Skywind and just going back to Morrowind.
Okay, so since I did just the best segue ever, no, it wasn't, but yeah, I did lead us into it.
That was pretty good.
Let's talk about Skywind. So I guess this is the mandatory question that I have to do. But when did the project start, and where did it came from? Where did it come from?
I am not a long enough member of the team to answer this definitively or authoritatively, but this is my understanding, is that it started around 2012, and I believe it started on the More Oblivion forums, if I'm not mistaken, where basically shortly after Skyrim came out, there were some people who were like, hey, instead of making Morrowind in Oblivion, what about Morrowind in Skyrim? And that was basically it. And so some people started, tossing around some ideas, and then started collaborating on, okay, well, how would we do this? What would we need to do? And I know at one point in time, there was some version that was basically just kind of a kit bashed import of Morrowind assets into the Skyrim engine that was janky, broken, and never really worked right. I've never personally seen that build because that was so long before me. And then I think around 2016 was when there was kind of a big restart of the project, and that's where the oldest kind of current members, a lot of them kind of got started then, and then started kind of working on Discord and through forums and other different things, but then started kind of real genuine effort at making a game development project out of it. Yeah, it's been going strong since then. The passionate work of, I think we're at over 1,400 different people have contributed in some meaningful and measurable way. So sometimes it's, somebody's just recorded a couple voice lines. Other times it's, somebody who's coded a ton of things, or, people who are still with the project. So we've had a lot of people over the years, and a lot of still active people, and development is ongoing and exciting.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. Of course, I'm not going to ask when is it coming out, because I know that that's not something that you want to ask, Evan.
I mean, you can. We actually have a command. We have a bot command on our Discord for when people ask for a release date, and it usually has some snarky comment or another. Because I get it. The whole reason that I am with Skywind is that I want to play Skywind, so I want to help make Skywind so that Skywind exists and I can play it. So I definitely understand people being eager to know when it's coming out. And I would love to have an answer. The reason that we are so careful about giving any kind of estimates on, percentages or release dates or anything like that is that we don't want to disappoint people, because we want to make sure that it is as good as it can be. I will say Skywind will definitely have, a lot of ongoing love and attention. There's no way that the number of people who are involved in this, that, once Skywind is released, that we're going to be like, okay, cool, bye. And there's also the fact that the Elder Scrolls modding community has always been so vibrant, and it has allowed us to be what we are. And so there's no way that Skywind comes out and people aren't going to then come up with their own mods, which I'm frankly deeply excited about, because there's a lot of things that I'm sure we would love to do, or things we've been asked to do that we're not going to do, but somebody else will, and it would be absolutely fun and exciting to see that.
I think the interesting balancing act that when you start a project like this, when you're kind of merging two games together, so it's like the matter of the original experience versus the new experience, can we call it, or remake experience? I don't know if you could call it that. So of course I read, in your frequently asked questions on the website, like, is the combat gonna be like in Morrowind? And you say no, it's gonna be more like Skyrim, blah blah blah. How do you think the balancing act in this case is gonna work? Like, what kind of things, what kind of experience should one expect from like vanilla Morrowind going into Skywind?
So that is a great question, and it has a nuanced answer depending on who you ask. And what I mean by that is that because we have so many contributors, we definitely have different opinions, and we have a good general direction and a general philosophy, and that is we're not trying to do just a remaster or a remake. We're not trying to do just like, oh, we upgraded all of the graphics and here you go, it's Morrowind again. So this is kind of a reimagining of what if Morrowind was made today. And by that, what I mean is what can be done to create the experience of Morrowind with current technology. So some of that is, for example, if people look at our videos of Vivec, the city, the Palace of Vivec now has this like crazy like fire and like planets and everything, which matches the original concept art of the palace, where this, demigod lives. They added that to the rendering of Morrowind. It would have melted computers. Like you had maybe like a GeForce 3 Ti 500 back then, versus these days it's like, yeah, of course we can have that up there. It's going to look awesome. There's voice acting, so that's a huge thing that we actually have to work on the writing aspect. Beyond that, we are trying to honor what Morrowind was and is, but we're not trying to copy it. That being said, we're also not trying to reinvent the wheel, because the whole reason that everybody is on this project is because we love Morrowind. So one of the things that we get asked sometimes is like, oh, well, how much are you guys going to change? And it's like, yeah, we're not really going to change that much, because we are all doing this out of love for Morrowind. That being said, if what you want to play is Morrowind with dice roll combat and everything else, Morrowind still exists. You can still go and play Morrowind. We are doing things like modernizing the combat where, it's like, yes, your weapon hits the body and it does damage, that kind of stuff. By the same token, we're not trying to say, oh, well, this is Morrowind made with Skyrim's rules, in which case there would be no levitation. We have levitation. We put that in the game. It hasn't been in since Morrowind. Oblivion didn't have it. Skyrim didn't have it. It's messy. I totally, absolutely, like from a development standpoint, understand levitation can make things complicated. But that being said, it was part of the Morrowind experience, and we want that to be there. So we are really trying to, again, reimagine, I think is really the best way of thinking about it is, what if we could make Morrowind today? And we have the advantage of, since we are just a mod project, we're all volunteers, everybody is putting in what time they can. We have a ton of people who are putting their time into this, and we don't have a deadline set by a publisher or anything like that. So that does give us a lot more flexibility to take our time and do things right and get to add in cool things. We have item descriptions, for example, which is kind of unique to the Elder Scrolls games. I guess maybe ESO does that, to be fair, but we have it so that, you pick up, an artifact or something like that, and like there's a cool little tidbit of lore. We're trying to, fix and improve things where that's appropriate. So with writing, for example, so if you've played Morrowind, there's a ton of times where you get directions from somebody. They're like, oh, you need to go rescue my wife. She's at this Daedric ruin, and it's like down this road and then go west. And turns out that actually when somebody wrote that and then when they implemented the quest, well, that ruin is actually to the east. We're going in a situation where that's happened. We will fix that in the writing, and then the voice actor will, record the correct line and say like, okay, you head down this road and go to the east. But that being said, we're still trying to make sure that, much like in Morrowind, we are giving natural directions to the player, that, this is a person who's not going to just say, oh, I've marked it on your map. and you get a quest marker, they're like, no, like this is, I'm going to motion over to this is where this thing happened, and then you're going to go over there. Now, we do have the modern trappings and conveniences of quest markers and fast travel and all that other stuff, but all of that can be turned off. We believe in options and accessibility, so if you want your experience to be as close to Morrowind as possible, and it's 1000% an option for you. Personally, for me, like I love playing Morrowind, but Skywind and having like the ability to fast travel, like as a family man, like my time is at a premium. I will love being able to more rapidly move through the game in that regard. But if you don't want to do that, then by all means, you are not required to use fast travel. So, we're just trying to open it up and reimagine it and make it as cool as it can be for people who enjoyed the original and people who have never played it, which is a lot of people.
Yeah, that was what I was actually thinking. Would you see Skywind as more that something that a fan of more, classic Morrowind fan can enjoy, or someone that has never played Morrowind? Because you mentioned before that there are people who, you see, like, try to approach Morrowind today and they're gonna run up against a wall and probably give up. So are you hoping that perhaps Skywind can, like, help them in that regard?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that a lot of people have not been able to experience the world, the lore, the characters of Morrowind and of Vardenfell in a meaningful way, especially, younger players and stuff like that. And honestly, even older players who, maybe didn't get a chance to play it when it came out, and now they just think it, looks too dated or it feels too dated. But that being said, I think also, diehard Morrowind fans are really going to enjoy Skywind. It is so much Morrowind. It's not one-to-one by any means, but having played around inside the build and playing in the world, it feels like Morrowind. You have that moment when, you walk into Balmora for the first time and you see this, town that's kind of split on the two sides of this little river Odai. And, there's the impressiveness of the cantons of Avec, and it's just, it feels right. I know that sounds, like such a simple answer or such a PR answer, but like, no, it feels right. Like as a diehard Morrowind, like lover, like Skywind feels right. So I think if you're an old fan or if you've never played it, I think you will enjoy it. Like, I think there's probably going to be inevitably, some group of people who won't enjoy it. And in that case, again, like Morrowind exists. Please enjoy that. We all do. That's why we're doing this.
You have the choice. So there's a little point in complaining. But yeah, of course, they're going to complain.
You would be surprised at the number of people who seem to think that the existence of Skywind will make Morrowind no longer exist. I don't think that's genuinely their thought, but their argument and their logic kind of centers around that point. And so we often just reply with like, yeah, you can still play Morrowind. We even have a mod list on our Discord of, if you want to play Morrowind, like these are the mods that we recommend to give you as close to a vanilla experience with, some modern improvements. To enjoying the original Morrowind, because we want people to experience that. We're like, no, please play that, get excited, come volunteer, come help us on Skywind, discover how amazing Morrowind is and help us make Skywind a reality.
Yeah, that's actually a great way to answer those people that complain. But yeah, of course they're gonna complain anyway. One other thing I wanted to ask, because you're in charge of the writing as well.
I'm a co-lead. Yeah, I work with some others, some other people who also do amazing work. Frankly, probably do more work than me a lot of times on making the writing happen.
Basically, just adding what is essentially new stuff. Not a lot of new stuff, as I get it, but there's gonna be new tidbits and lore and stuff like that. So how are you approaching this? Of course, as someone that's not a video game writer, of course, that's not your main job. So sure. I was curious to know how you would approach that.
So the first thing is we want to look at, we're not actually just adding new writing, we're also in some cases having to edit the original writing. Because if you look at Morrowind, it's a largely text-based game. Like, you have all of your NPC barks of like, you walk up to somebody and you're like, hello, Outlander. But you don't really have the dialogue in exchange with the characters. And with Skywind, You do. When you have a giant block of text that is a lore dump of exposition, that doesn't really work. That's not how people operate. Like, you know, I don't come up to you on the street and I'm like, hey, how are you? And it's like, I'm great. It's like, cool. Can you tell me about your job? And you're like, yes, let me tell you about what my job title is and what that job title entails in detail. It's like, yeah, like if you say you're a baker, like, okay, cool, you bake goods. Like, I get that. You don't need to explain, you know, what being a baker means. Modernizing the dialogue in that regard is something that basically all done. We are adding some things. So one example is, this is something that I directly did. There's a character in the Dragonborn DLC for Skyrim who is an administrator at the Raven Rock colony, previously mentioned from Blood Moon. And that character is the son of a prominent Redoran council member from Morrowind. But that character is not present in Morrowind at all. Now, if we introduce him and put him into that world, and then, you know, your player character like kills him or something, then it's like, okay, well, now you've like disrupted the timeline, and there's no reason that we should, you know, have that in there. But we can put in a letter that's like, oh, hey, you know, here's where I am. This is, you know, a thing that I'm doing. I'm going to go, you know, study this stuff. And it kind of explains, you know, the pathway that put him to eventually becoming this administrator in Raven Rock. So it's something that makes sense in the world. You know, you have like, oh, okay, you know, this counselor has a letter from her son. Like that, there's no way that that sticks out and seems weird. But if you've played Morrowind and you've played Skyrim and you recognize that character's name, that's a cool little treat for you. We're always trying to manage our expectations and our ability to deliver a product, so we don't, you know, one of the things like we get asked is like, oh, well, could you join the Sixth House? Can you join the bad guys? And it's like, yeah, no, we're not going to like rewrite an entire like section of the main quest where all of a sudden now you can do something that's completely different from Morrowind. You know, we are trying to preserve that original spirit and intent.
That's another balancing act, basically. There's a lot of tightrope walking.
And it very much is. Yeah, because I mean, again, you know, it's like you want to elevate and lift up the writing that is there, but you know, again, like I've been saying, we all love Morrowind, so we don't want to, you know, completely change it up. So there's, you know, so much of it is very much the same, and we're just updating it so that it's functional. You know, these days people like click through dialogue so quickly that it's like, yeah, if you aren't getting the information in a way that is going to actually sink into the player, then they're going to go, okay, well, wait, what am I actually supposed to be doing on this quest? Breaking up that dialogue in a way that makes sense is, you know, a big task. And then, like I said, you know, there's a lot of the little extra tidbits. You know, we're doing all of these item descriptions for adding quests and things like that we're writing for. So, you know, one of the big things I did when I became a writing lead was we had all of the different writers that had contributed over the years, you know, just had Google Docs that were kind of like tracked on a sheet somewhere. Half of them are like offline, you know, somebody's like, they live in Antarctica now and nobody can, you know, access the document anymore. And so I went through and I like got everything, put it into a Google Drive, like got backups of everything, you know, in multiple locations. So everything's secure. If anybody, you know, quits the project or decides to delete their work, you know, we are still able to retain what is in the game, things like that. And then, you know, kind of better organize with the other writing code leads, you know, how we're tracking tasks, how we're measuring progress on things, you know, how we're, what deadlines we're setting to get deliverables, and kind of put more of a professional sheen on it. And I think it's been largely successful, and it's to credit why we are where we are right now, with writing being more or less functionally complete. You know, we're going through and doing some polish and things like that, but you know, we've made incredible progress, and you know, I definitely give credit to the other writing code leads for that, for really helping get us organized and kind of moving in the right direction.
Something that just popped in my head. Have you or anyone else on the team thought about like getting any of the original writers from Morrowind involved? I mean, not involved in the project per se, of course, because that would be probably not feasible, but like, you know, for like a feedback.
So I don't want to say too much, but I do know that there have been some conversations with some people. I have participated in some conversations with some people, but in general, we want to try to respect that this is our work, respect where their work is. And that is, you know, you want to talk about a balancing act. It's very, very difficult at times, but critical to make sure that when we are writing, you're matching tone. So, maybe you've got this character who has like this block of text, but if you change them to be kind of like more upbeat in how they're delivering this information, it's like, no, like this is like supposed to be like a dour, like jerk of a wizard. Like he's not going to have this, friendly, affable conversation with you about, oh, how's your day going? It's like, no, like this guy hates that you are bothering him. And though we are changing the dialogue to reflect that it's now spoken word, his dialogue still has to match the fact that like this guy is annoyed that you are talking to him. And so we are very careful in how, not just what we write, but how we read. And there are a lot of discussions sometimes where it's like, okay, like, is this character, like, are they being sarcastic with you? Are they kind of like teasing you? And it's like those small distinctions kind of matter because we want to make sure that our writing reflects as much of the original author's intent as possible. So there are times that we've reached out to people. There's also a ton of, if you're an Elder Scrolls fan, you're probably familiar with the Imperial Library. There is a ton of stuff on there from old Elder Scrolls forums and different blog posts that writers and developers and other people have contributed to over the years. And we use those resources frequently. Like I have one of the few icons that I have in my bookmark bar is the unofficial Elder Scrolls pages, which also references a lot of out of lore tags, where it's like, okay, this is the thing that's in the game, and then this is what this writer said in this one forum post about this concept. And then there are times that we'll explore something like that, or other times where we're like, yeah, I mean that's cool and all, but like that wasn't in Morrowind, and we don't necessarily want to force that in just because we think that's cool. Yeah, we're trying to respect the original writer's work, and in some cases we will reach out for some feedback, but we are also trying to really be confident and stand strong in our own integrity and vision for the writing and narrative design of Skywind.
One last thing I want to ask about Skywind, this is more like a personal curiosity. How many people have, of course I have to use the past as well because it's been going on for so long, how many people have worked on Skywind and how many people are working right now?
So like I said, I think it's over 1,400 in terms of like all together over the history of it. As far as currently, I would say there's probably 200 people. I'm completely guessing at this, so if I'm wrong, then by no means am I speaking with authority on the number of current people. Because the thing is, it's volunteer. People come and go. You'll have, something like, I mean, speaking for myself, it's like, okay, working. Like, hey, my kid was born. Like, I'm going to be gone for a couple of months and like deal with my kid being born. And then, I'll come back and like help out when I can. You have people who are like, oh, I am working really hard on this level design section of the world, but at this point I also now need to go take my finals. So I'll see you guys in a couple weeks. But yeah, I'd say we probably have at least 100 people currently active, probably closer to 200, because we also have, translators, we have QA, you've got just everybody. I mean, nav meshing, like the number of triangles that you have to lay down so that everything knows where to go. You have to put navigation in for all of the AI to pathfind in the world, and otherwise it doesn't work. And so, yeah, we've got a ton of people working on it at any given time.
Just out of curiosity, again, probably just because of where I come from, but are you going to be translating Skywind in Italian as well?
I believe so. I cannot speak with authority on what languages we are translating to definitively. There's probably something somewhere that I could look at. So yes, Italian is on the list that I just found of localization management. So, let me just point this out, by the way, as far as Skywind goes. You asked me that question, I had no answer at all. You caught me completely flat-footed, and I opened up Discord and scrolled down a little bit and looked through our dev channels and was like, okay, translation, looked through our pins, found a localization guide that had a link to a document that went over everything for the translation team, had a link to a database of the languages and teams who were working on each of those languages. So having no knowledge of that, I was able to get that information relatively quickly because we are really trying to be well organized and professional at this. So, props to our translation team that I was able to just wing that answer and actually get you the factual, truthful answer on that.
I asked that question specifically because Morrowind never got an official Italian translation. I believe an official one was done in like 2017. Of course, I have no idea how good it is, but
yeah, and we are working very closely with our translation team because there's, speaking of, kind of updating it and having to manage things. There's a lot of idioms that maybe to the original, American English writers made sense.
Yep.
Where they're writing something and it's like, oh yeah, of course, like, everybody understands that. And it's like, yeah, no, that's an analogy from baseball. Like that doesn't make any sense to anybody outside of the United States. There's so many turns of phrase that can be even just region specific. So we're very careful when we're translating to really go through those things. And as writers, a lot of times we get great questions from the translators where they're like, okay, what is this actually, like, what are you trying to say? Like, what is the information you're trying to convey with these words? And how is the best way that I can convey that with words in this other language? Because a lot of times it's, Google Translate mangles things all the time because it's just saying this word translates to this word. But that doesn't mean that the meaning translates. So that's a very difficult line, and that's why we have, it's not just translation, it's localization. And I think that's, a beautiful distinction that even today, I think a lot of games, professionally developed games, will miss the mark on that, where they're like, oh yeah, like, we used AI and translated it into 20 different languages. And it's like, yeah, but in everything except for the native language, half of your dialogue doesn't make sense because you're just translating this word equals this word, not this meaning is explained through these words in this other language.
One thing I have to ask before we end this episode that was about Skywind, the Elder Scrolls, and Morrowind specifically. Of course, I have to ask, what is your favorite bit of Morrowind lore, and why is it the lustful Argonian maid?
It is not the lustful Argonian maid. That is... I know. Look, let me tell you. So, just as a side note before I answer your question.
Yes.
As a writing lead, I review the applications for writers to join the team. This is one of the downsides of writing. Mm-hmm. Everybody in some form or another in their life writes. Whether you write emails or you write a grocery list, like everybody writes. So like not everybody 3D models. Like you don't have everybody just showing up and saying like, oh, I totally 3D model sometimes. Everybody writes.
Yes.
There are a lot of people who think of themselves as writers who don't necessarily have writing experience or perhaps have never had work that's been critiqued by other people, and sometimes you can tell. I've had some people, to be fair, I've had some people who have submitted what is essentially fan fiction, and it's fantastic. And I'm like, yes, this is awesome. You have like an amazing natural talent. Like, please join our team. We'll work on honing your skills. But you have a lot of people who are inspired by certain elements of the Elder Scrolls, including the lusty Argonian maid. There are things that I have read from applications that I'm just like, why would you submit this? Like, why would you ask another human being to read these things knowing what you wrote? Like, what you wrote. And I don't want to, I don't need that image in my mind. So to actually answer your question, my favorite bit of Elder Scrolls lore is the namesake of the character's title in Morrowind. So you are the Nerevarine or however you want to pronounce it. That is that you are perhaps the reincarnation of Indoril Nerevar, who was the Hortatoran war leader from an ancient time. What I love is that you can pore over all of the documents and all of these things that are said in and out of the game, and you do not have a definitive answer of what exactly happened to him and whether or not you are in fact his reincarnation. Because a lot of people say you are. The main quest is getting these Ashlander tribes and the Great Houses and even Vivek to recognize that you are. But you can get all the way to the end of the game and confront Dagoth, and he's like, yeah, like, who are you? Like, are you actually like Nerevar reincarnated? And you can be like, yeah, no. Like I'm just some dude. I'm just here to like mess up your day and get rich trying. Like I love the fact that there's this rich history that is unknown because it's been lost to time. Because that is, one of the things that I really fell in love with in Morrowind is how often they use the unreliable narrator. This is a book that was written by people who live in this world, who had biases, who had motivations in what information they included and what information was excluded. There's this whole like sub-faction that's called the dissident priests, who are basically considered heretics because they believe a different version of history. And that version might be correct. It might be incorrect. And there's not a definitive answer to that. And I love that. So, in a way that's my answer to kind of what I love about the Elder Scrolls in general. What happened to the dwarves? Why did they disappear? That's a great question. And there's not a definitive answer. And if Todd Howard has his way, I think there's never going to be a definitive answer to that. And I think that's okay. I think it's sometimes good to just have a mystery. So, that's what I love. But yeah, Indoril Nerevar, totally like probably one of my favorite fictional characters in my like real life office, like my work office for my day job. Like I have a like canvas painting of him like up on the wall. Like it's not huge or anything, but like it's this tiny little like canvas piece of art that I was just like, yeah, I love this guy. So one of my favorite fictional characters and probably my favorite thing about Morrowind and the Elder Scrolls in general.
Yeah, and I believe it is very close to real life as well, as much as fantasy RPG can get, in that a lot of things in life as well don't really have a definitive answer.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and also that things can change based on what information we uncover.
Yes.
About history. Like speaking of the Mediterranean region, and it's like we for a long time treated the idea of Troy or a Trojan War as being just this pure myth. And then, time advances and then we're like, oh, it looks like there actually may have been a conflict kind of like that, not obviously what happened in the myths that were passed down, but that there was in fact this, city in this region and that something happened and it was sacked and destroyed. Geez, like 200 years ago, we didn't even know that like dinosaurs were real. So, obviously things can change significantly as we uncover new information. And that's one of the things that I love about the Elder Scrolls is that it's like, yeah, you can start off with this concept of how the world works and what the truth of things is. And as you advance through the story and advance through the world and get to know things, you can change your mind. And I love that, especially in Morrowind, you are given the agency to make your own choices about that. You can decide, like, do you believe that you are the reincarnation of this ancient warrior? Do you believe that you are ordained by fate and prophecy to bring an end to this blight? Like, are you this promised hero? Or are you just taking advantage of the situation? Are you serving the Empire, or are you subverting their efforts by pretending to go along with the plans of the Blades while actually uniting the houses of the Dunmer to stand up to, imperial colonization? You can decide like how you feel about that as a player character. And that is reflected through the choices you can make in dialogue. And that's awesome. Like, I love that. Even if it's not something that like has a visual change in the world, just the fact that you are given the chance to make those choices and say those things and decide for yourself as a player, like as you're sitting there, it's like, what do you feel? How do you want to handle this? And that's, that is role-playing by definition. So I love that.
And also, just like real life, sometimes mud crabs just want to sell you stuff.
I mean, the number of times that an alcoholic mud crab has walked up to me and had a surprising amount of gold for everything that I had in my inventory. If only I had Daedric weapons that I could sell them.